Hey everyone, Art Trading here. Welcome back to my channel. Just kind of going to go over today the 10-second zones I use for scalping. Going to go over what I look for, what low time frame, which is a 10-second, what high time frame, which is a 1 minute that I generally use. Uh, just going to go off the bat. The reason why I'm using 10 seconds to the 1 minute, it is a multiple of 6, which makes it a perfect number. And you might ask, okay, what does that have to do with anything? And being a perfect number, I noticed that the relationship between that low time frame and that high time frame ends up being a lot cleaner. I know some people use the 2 minutes with the 12 minute, which is another multiple of 6. But I'm just going to go over how I use it, what confluences I look for. So kind of diving right in, I'm going to go over examples that I personally took and also ideas that I would take going into Wednesday, July 10th. Just kind of show you. So you have the 1 minute on the right over here and the 10 seconds on the left over here. This is on NQ, by the way, if anyone's wondering. But since price is fractal, you could pretty much use this with any other futures model or commodities. So going into the 1 minute, one of the things I like to look for now, first and foremost, it is nice to have a bias for the day. Uh, Personally, I don't put too much importance on it because we are scalping from middle of the zone of a 10-second to the low or high of that zone. And, we've seen throughout the days where those zones still get respected. If you're going for higher targets or valid highs and valid lows, then that could be a different perspective to have a higher time frame bias, for example, for the day. Me personally, I don't like to marry bias, so I don't get stubborn about it. But I'm going to go over what I look for. So just to show you this, on the 1 minute, we put in a wick up here. Now, technically, this is not a swing high yet. However, on the low time frame, or if you're going with the 3-bar setup being a swing point over here, we did fail to close above it and then close below this valid low right here. So this already signifies a zone. Now, if we close below a valid low down here, then that would create a true zone as well. But since we didn't close below any of these lows over here, this would be the valid zone. Now, there's a couple ways you could trade this. What I personally like to do is take the 50% of that zone, placing a limit, risking high of the zone high, targeting zone low, which is your 1-to-1. No break even parameters on this yet. I would say if it comes to the zone low, for example, right down here, and it does not tag me out and it decides to make a move back up, then I will go break even. Or let's say if we do have an AMD where you do have accumulation, manipulates down and then distributes back up, if that manipulation does not tag me out, then I will resort to a break even. But since it's on the tighter side of the 10-second, being a 10-second zone, I don't like to be trigger happy with the break evens. Now, another method you could use this, and actually I believe it was GR that commented on my video prior, was he likes to take the 60-61% of the zone. So if you take your fib, mark out the zone, and you go to the 60-61%, you're going to get about an hour and a half targeting that zone low, okay, which is great, to be honest. You could also use 70%. There will be a caveat, of course, a give or take. So let's say if you're putting your limit at the 70%, there's a chance it might not reach up there and hit zone low. Or same thing for the 60. So you kind of have to play with what you're okay with, what R&R you're okay with. If you go 1-to-1s, you can do the 50. If you like to push to that 1.5, you can do the 60% as well. Okay, so this is an example right here based off the 1 minute, okay? Now, going on to this next area over here. So 1 minute, swing high, pushes up, fails to close. So fail to close being closes back in the range. So wicks up, closes back in the range. Now, you could be looking for a 10-second zone here, but what do we not have? is a valid 10-second zone to go short. So if we close below this low, this valid low, that would be the 10-second zone that you could base a short out of. However, since we did not have a valid low that this swing closed below, this is not a valid zone. Okay, hence why I kept running up and ran that high eventually. Hope that makes sense. Now, there's another example over here. This is actually on Thursday, July 11th. So 1 minute, obviously, we're showing bearishness. You have this 1 minute SNDR, which is the move responsible for the continuation to the downside. Okay, create this SNDR on the 1 minute, and also over here, if you look to the left on the 10-second, is we do have this 10-second zone. Actually, a very clean 10-second zone. Okay, pushed up, swing high, back below, close below this low right here. Now, a couple ways going off of what I was saying prior is you could take 50% of that zone. So unless price has mitigated at least 50% of that zone, to me, this does not qualify as mitigation. So you see this move up into the zone. It's about, I would say, 40% of it. To me, that does not mean it is mitigated. To me, this is more of just a single tap into the zone, and then this would be technically the double tap mitigating that zone, hence why you get the bigger move down, right? So you can take 50% of the zone, limit order there for a short, risking zone high, targeting zone low. Or same thing, you could do the 60%. But see, like what I was talking about earlier, let's say you're trying to target or put your limit at 70%, you will not get tagged in on this one. Okay, so like I said, there's going to be give or takes, even though you're going for a higher RR. If you're going past a certain point, the chances of getting your entry is going to be significantly less. Okay, now a couple things you can also do is, so this would be your true zone. Okay, this valid high took this low, right? Now what you could also do is base it off the move origin. So even though it's not a significant difference, this is technically the move origin. So actually, I don't even like that color. Change it back there. So this would be the move origin. So the last swing low that put in that high. Okay, you could base it off that. So let's say if you're going off the move origin, you're going to get a tighter stop. Okay, now with this, you could either target the low of the move origin or the low of the true zone. So a couple of ways you could play off that. I think the most important thing would be is being able to identify true zones and the move origins, because especially being on 10 seconds, it could tend to get a little bit confusing if you're not used to it. Okay, so going to go over this example right here. Now we do have a clear 1 minute zone that's formed close below it, right? Now, if you're gonna play off the 10-second zone, you can either do the full zone, which that would be the true zone. So let's say you're going for the 50%, which would be, let's say you're going for the 50%, 53275, risking zone high, going to zone low for a 1-to-1, that would just hit instantly, right? Because we closed below this low right here, that's a high that broke the low. This would be your true zone. Close below it right here, 50% tap, come back down. Okay, so that would be your single tap. Now another way you could play this is, instead of going by the zone, the move origin is still unmitigated. Now, typically, depending on the clarity, based on the 1 minute, what sticks out more so is we do have this unmitigated wick up here, okay, which tends to be a magnet more so. So having an unmitigated move origin and the unmitigated wick, chances are you're going to get a reaction out of it, okay? Specifically, more so this being the single tap right here, there's a chance for that double tap. So if move origin is unmitigated, you could also base it off this right here. So 50% of move origin, which would be that, risking off the high of the move origin. and you could take profit at a 1-to-1, which is the low of the move origin, or take it out to that zone low, which is almost about 2R. Or let's say if you're going for the 60%, right there, that's about 2.5R if you're going for the zone low. Me personally, this would be my play for now, is a 1-to-1 after entering to that 50%. Actually, if you're even going for the 60%, this would not have even tagged you in. So like I said earlier, the higher your entry is going to be, the less chance you are going to get for that entry. Of course, your R&R is going to increase. So it comes down to what you are personally okay with. Which personally, if you would rather have more of a higher chance of getting into that trade and getting that 1-to-1, or being okay with missing out on trades like this, going for 60%. Okay? Completely comes down to your personal trading level. So just talk about this example right here. We do have a 1-minute zone, a very clear 1-minute zone. Now, same thing. For me, move origin is unmitigated, right? So you do have the true zone, which is this whole thing right here, because price closed above this high. Didn't close above this high, closed above this high, so that would be your true zone. So basically your 10-second zone is the same as your 1-minute zone, but you can refine it a couple ways. Now, if you're just going off the 1-to-1 of true zone, so zone low to zone high, and that's about 26.5 points. I personally do not risk 26.5 points for a trade. It does work, of course, chances of it working are on the higher side, but I'm not going to risk 26.5 for the trade. Now you can do a couple refinements, okay? So I had the move origin marked out, which to me that made the most sense, specifically because this would be the single tap, so I expected a double tap coming down into for the higher move up. Didn't give me entry, but this would have been my trade over here. So 50% of move origin, which is the last move down that created that low, and for a 1-to-1, so which is about 12-point risk. Okay, now you can do it did not tag me in, it got close, did not tag me in, which is okay. You can do a little bit of refinement. So for example, instead of doing true zone or move origin, there is an intermediary zone, which technically would be, I would say, at this point over here. Okay, so pretty much the zone within the zone. Now, if you're going based off this, 50%, 4, 7, 8. So still pretty high to my standards. Instead of 26.5 points, you're going 23 or 3/4. Or if this is something you would want to go 60, 70% of the fib, like for example, 70%, risking 14.5 points for 33 points, which is about a little over 2.25 R. Okay, so just showing different ways to play these zones and using high time frame confluence in picking the correct 10-second zones. So moving on to Friday, these are all trades that I personally took. Well, 2 didn't get me entries in, but these 2 I personally took on my accounts. Going off this one right here, this is actually pre-market as well. So how I saw this, actually let me go up here because that's technically not the first trade. These trades up here. So first and foremost on these, even though it's counter trend, 2 things I saw. We did take an external high to the left. I don't like to look too left, but it was an external high that was taken. And more so is this move up had a lack of consolidation. So usually when there is a lack of consolidation and an intense move, typically this whole move gets filled, which is exactly what happened right here, okay? Because there's a lack of consolidation, a lack of volume, generally these moves will get ran back down. So going based off that, unmitigated 1-minute candle up here, which like I said could tend to be a magnet and reject out of, and at the same time created a 10-second zone. Okay, now 50%, this one hit entry to the tick, did not tag me in, went straight to zone low. Okay, same for this over here, same thing, unmitigated wick up here, 10 10-second zone. This is actually, I was basing off the true zone. So something like this, let me clean this up real quick. Something like this, you could either take the true zone, which is that high that broke that low, or you could do move origin, which is still unmitigated, and do 50% of that. I just went for the 50% of the zone. It was only 6 3/4 points, which is fine by me. Same thing happened. So back to back, price hit entry, did not tag me in, went straight to TP. That was actually within, I believe, like less than 20 seconds. Now going off the first one I actually entered in. So we do have this unmitigated 1 minute zone down here. Now, two ways you could play this, like I said earlier. We do have your 10-second true zone, which is unmitigated. Okay, so 50% of it has not been tapped yet. You can play it off that. This, I went with the move origin, which is from this high to this low. So the last high that put in the low. Okay, you could deem this swing point right here as the move origin as well. I just thought this made more sense. So you could deem this as intermediary or move origin, depending on how you're seeing it. Now, I did not go 50% true zone. I actually went with this more refined zone down here. Hit 50%, or if you're going for 60%, that would have tagged you in as well. And then just for that move origin high. Okay, so this you could have played either that high of that move origin or the high of the zone. Both hit. Now, another thing I want to say is, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is if true zone was met and zone high was met, for me, I like to avoid playing the move origin, depending on how it looks on the 1 minute, especially if it's counter trend. I like to avoid it. Because typically if that zone's mitigated, if you're going with trend with a bullish bias, that double tap should send it higher. But based on this move on the 1 minute, I figured we would go a little bit lower, chop around, and this was prior to open as well. Okay, now going off this second trade right here, you actually had a 1 minute zone. I actually used the 1 minute zone as a 10-second zone because you see here you got this low, that high, that broke that low. So a 10-second zone is the 1 minute zone. So you could argue that this is just playing the 1 minute zone, 50% of it goes straight down. So earlier I was mentioning if the manipulation does not tag me out, I will go break even. So I have a video on this, which is the video prior. If you notice, once this, so I got in short over here. Once this candle was created, I did go break even because you do have your accumulation. Let's try it based on this. You do have your accumulation over here. Okay. So what happens? Accumulates, manipulates, and then distributes up. Obviously, this was a fake AMD. But so to the point, this move down here, I went break even already, but tagged me out at the same time, like about 15 seconds later. Okay. So hopefully that clears a lot of things up on the 1 minute, what I look for, whether it's external highs being taken, fail to closes occurring, 1 minute zones, things like that. And, you know, cool thing about the 10-second with the 1 minute, you have pretty much opportunity every single day, any hour of the day, I would say. Hence why this I was trading pre-market. Pre-market is the earliest I would go. So generally, if there's 8:30 Eastern news, I'll wait about 10-15 minutes. If I can catch a few before market open, great. If not, typically I'll wait 15 minutes after market open, or like 10 o'clock in the morning till 11, depending also on range. So, you know, as we saw like CPI on Thursday, which I personally didn't take PA accounts on Thursday, the range was extremely high. So if you're okay risking 20, 30 points for those 10-second zones, so be it. But I would prefer tighter ranges. So typically that does happen around 11 a.m. It just goes based on the day as well. So thanks for joining, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below or ask me on Twitter. But until then, I will talk to you guys later. See ya.